Sophie, welcome to the show. You are a dancer yourself, is that right?
Yes, that's right. I've been dancing since 2018.
Oh. How did you get into that industry?
It's very much a sort of one that you put yourself in, and then you kind of, by and large, a lot of people do teach themselves how to do the job, and it's quite like a, you determine how things go for yourself in the industry, and in quite a lot of ways, yeah, you just show up basically, and they say you can have a trial shift, and you get on stage and just kind of make it up as you go along, more or less.
I assume you've got to be a bit of an exhibitionist to take off your clothes in front of a series of strangers.
Yeah, I mean, some people definitely have that tendency. For others, I think what attracts them to the job is more like the flexibility of the hours, which is why it's such a popular job with students, and yeah, often even like young mums and stuff like that, because it does offer a lot more flexibility than a traditional 9-to-5 employment situation. So yeah, although you might think that everyone's an exhibitionist, some people are just sort of making a pragmatic choice for themselves by choosing to be a stripper.
Okay, and it's got a sort of a tawdry connection with it in certain quarters. In other quarters, it's sort of a female empowerment issue, and in other quarters, it's regarded as sort of a traitorous in terms of the feminist ideology. Where do you fit on that particular argument?
Well, I do consider myself a feminist, which doesn't mean that I uncritically want to parrot everything that all feminists say, but from my perspective, I think it can be a very empowering job. When people are appreciating your performances and, you're being well paid and you're looked after by the club, it's very empowering. But, yeah, a lot of clubs don't empower their workers, and, yeah, then it can become quite exploitative. I think it definitely isn't inherently an exploitative and terrible thing, but, yeah, bad club management does make it exploitative pretty quickly, and there's not much you can do about that if you work for those clubs. Most people just have to either suck it up or move somewhere else where they're treated better.
I've always associated striptease, and I've been to a couple of strip clubs, used to in in Wellington when I was, younger. But I've always associated striptease clubs with the sex industry in general. Have I got that wrong?
I wouldn't say so, no. Sex worker has become, I think, a bit more of an umbrella term than maybe it used to be. So girls who do just online work and never actually necessarily deal with real people, they'll consider themselves sex workers a lot of the time too. So I guess if your job is based around, being beautiful and seductive, then a lot of people consider themselves a sex worker if they do that in some form.
Well, you see, the interesting thing is to me that it's quite old-fashioned, really, isn't it? Stripping to a certain degree, Sophie, because you've got pornography venues or sort of single OnlyFans and things like that, which essentially are subscription-based. So I'm interested the strip industry still survives, to be honest with you, in 2024. What's its appeal?
Well, I think a lot of people do genuinely like to watch pole dancing, and, watching a video of someone pole dance is so not the same as seeing them do it in real life. The electricity of someone's performance comes through a lot better in person than it does on a screen. And obviously, it's not as sociable to just be online looking at people do things as it is to be in a venue with your friends doing something as a group. So we do get a lot of stag parties. You can't really have those without strippers, if you want to have the traditional stag experience.
Well, you can, but I take your point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but yeah, if you want the whole 9 yards, then strippers are involved. It also gives an opportunity for people who are in committed and monogamous relationships to have a little bit of fun without, cheating on their partner, which I think, people, especially married people, appreciate that opportunity. So it kind of, exists in that grey area of, it's exciting and sexy, but, you're not going to get a divorce over it, probably.
Now, one of the things that I did notice, I think, about Calendar Girls when they set up in Auckland, as I said in my introductory remarks, I remember getting invited to the opening. I didn't go, just because I wasn't in Auckland, to be honest with you. But as I remember, it had a brothel that was above it in Auckland, I think, and that the strippers were, well, some of them were available for hire later on for sexual acts. Is that common or is that uncommon?
That's quite common in city clubs, yeah. Not so much in smaller towns.
Right, okay. So that happens in Queenstown?
Queenstown strip clubs do not have that. No, there's no...
Oh, so the brothels are separate again. Okay, all right. Okay, so you've now set up, anyhow, a petition to stop a chain, or, well, sort of a chain. I think they've got two, one in Auckland, one in Wellington.
They have three.
Three. Okay.
Yeah.
It's from coming to Queenstown. In a funny sort of way, Queenstown's the obvious place to have a club like that, because you've got lots of Australians coming over for boozy weekends, etc. Why are you saying that this particular striptease group should not be allowed in Queenstown?
There's a multitude of reasons. They're just not a safe workplace, and they're a very exploitative workplace. So I did work for Calendar Girls for 4 years, and I have worked at all of their clubs, so I do have a lot of experience with them. They've always had issues with paying people properly and on time, and also the cuts they take are massive. So here in Queenstown and in a lot of the South Island and some of the North Island too, the dancer will keep 70% of her fee from a booking for a lap dance. And at Calendar Girls, some particular bookings, Calendar Girls will actually take 60% of that booking fee, leaving their dancer with only 40% of what the customer paid, which is like incredibly unfair when you're considering the intimacy of the service that the girls are providing. And just, you know, I think it doesn't take, you don't have to work in the striptease industry to realise that that's an extremely exploitative cut.
I presume that a dancer or a stripper who works at Calendar Girls knows what the financial arrangements are before she signs the employment contract, yeah?
Yes, but in clubs or in cities where there's not great clubs, or one club is only slightly better than the other, you know, a lot of people feel like they don't have like other clubs to choose from necessarily. So in Christchurch, I think there's 3 clubs now, but they're all run by Calendar Girls. So whichever of those clubs you work at, you're being exploited in the same way. So if you want to be a stripper in Christchurch, that's just your lot, really. I actually moved to Queenstown because I did want better working conditions. The clubs in Wellington are by and large pretty bad as well. Yeah, so it's, you know, people do have options, but you shouldn't have to move your entire life to be treated fairly in your profession. You know, you shouldn't have to move islands.
In your petition, you also say since dancers at Calendar Girls are only allowed to keep 50% of what they earn, many current and former dancers have reported needing to engage in unlicensed sex work, even though Calendar Girls is not a profit, just to make ends meet. Again, is that Calendar Girls' fault, or don't those women get into unlicensed sex work because they want to?
Not really. Calendar Girls very much turns a blind eye to sex work and drug use taking place at their clubs. So, yeah, they don't really protect the girls from being assaulted very well, and they don't sort of monitor the girls to make sure that they're, you know, carrying out their work in a legal way. So they just kind of like just don't really give a shit about what you do or what happens to you. And because, you know, a lot of girls do offer extra services in order to secure those bookings, it means to compete with those girls, more and more girls will be offering those services, if that makes sense, you know, because otherwise you're not going to get any bookings if heaps of
I'm assuming that Queenstown, being the international tourist destination that it is, has brothels, has prostitutes, has sex workers, and that would, in actual fact, there'd probably be quite a few of them pretty upmarket too, I would think. Is Calendar Girls going to offer real competition to that, or is it you're suggesting it's going to make it all sleazy?
Well, I think because Calendar Girls' prices are lower, that will attract customers. So I think that does mean that the girls who are working here in a legal and professional way are going to be losing out a bit if Calendar Girls does open. But, I mean, it's hard to say what will happen. Maybe they'll open and people won't really want to go because they will have heard about, you know, all the controversies. But as you mentioned earlier, a lot of our business does come from tourists, and those people can't really be expected to know the ins and outs of the industry here. So, yeah, I'm definitely concerned that it will take money away from well-run, safe clubs and put it in the hands of poorly run, dangerous clubs that have a history of exploiting girls.